Welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today our guest is Moushaumi Robinson. Moushaumi represented the United States in the 2004 Olympics in Athens, Greece. There she earned a gold medal as part of the 4x400 relay team. She has over 15 years international travel and professional track and field experience, winning world championships and Pan Am medals. Originally from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Robinson grew up in Columbus, Ohio, where she competed in summer track and field during high school. As a junior, she won the Ohio State title in the 400 meters and held that state title record for 4 years. At the University of Texas at Austin, Robinson was an 11-time All-American, broke an NCAA collegiate record, and was featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She also earned 2 bachelor's degrees while she was there in just over 4 years. So pretty impressive accolades there, Moushaumi.
Thank you. Listen, I've never heard it written, back. So that's really blessed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's incredible what you've done. We're about the same age, and I just think back over the last 20 years, I'm like, man, I wish I could say I've done all those things. That's pretty incredible. It's really great.
It's been like, I think that when we look at our life and the scope of, goals when we set when we're younger, we throw things out there and we say we want to do things. And oftentimes, we get on this routine and, we kind of get away from those youthful dreams that really bring our heart's desire. And I was just blessed to be in a space where I was able to continue to blossom that youthful dream.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because what I really want to talk about today is, I know you inspire youth around talking about how they can be their best selves, right? They can be the best you that there is. And so I want to know a little bit about your childhood. When you were growing up there in Mississippi, what made it so that you could excel so much in track and field and in life? I mean, you've been very successful academically and other things along the way. What were some of those things about your childhood that really put you in a position to succeed?
Well, I started when I was young. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I was born in Mississippi, and we left there when I was about 6 years old. So, one, I was able to be around my grandmother, and that was a good anchor. I spent all of my Christmases there. Every summer there, I would go back to Mississippi. So, really, the family and the family aspect, and just having that village is really what we're talking about, because at that time, the village looked like the neighborhood. So,
Right.
it was really that holistic fashion. And in terms of being in Columbus, Ohio, my mother and father, I was the only child in the household. And, my mother was so much on academics. She was very focused on that. And it was something about, just being successful. And I think, having discipline and having routine and knowing that, anything that I wanted to do, my parents instilled in me early that I had the full authority to accomplish that. Whether it was, if I got in trouble at home, my mother and father let me know it was something I'd done. It was a choice I made, and just like making good choices, good things come. And that was something that I was able to learn early on. But I think the biggest thing was the confidence that I often see, having been a high school teacher, that a lot of young people question. And I think even in my own self, internally, there was this desire. I said at 7 years old that after watching FloJo in the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, I ran upstairs to my my parents' kitchen. I said, Mom, I'm going to win a gold medal for me, you, and Dad. And I was 7, right? And just from that, like I said, it was that youthful dream that I held on to. And continuing that really kind of pushed that real movement. Yeah.
That's really cool. Around that same time, I was watching Carl Lewis, and that got me into long jump. I became a long jumper because I wanted to be just like Carl Lewis after watching him in the Olympics. So that's fun to hear that we had kind of those same experiences. Now, you had family support at home, and that helped shape who you were. A lot of kids watching this don't have that same kind of support at home. They might not have an ideal environment. So for those kids out there who maybe aren't from an ideal family situation, what advice would you give them as far as what they can control in their own environment?
Absolutely. Man, I tell you what, that was such a potent question to my life. I had the blessing of being a high school teacher for 7.5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I was a high school yoga teacher. And, I was able to facilitate a space to have real in-depth conversation with young people where they were once my fans, right, in the global perspective and international competition. So when I became a school teacher, I saw young people at a completely different perspective. You know, for me, when you go in loving, like truly loving the essence of a young person and the energy that they bring to life, you look at them different in that, you know, scope of schooling, and you learn them different. And what I had an opportunity to do was really dive into the different facets that these young people are growing up in. A lot of young people have two parents or families in the household, and they just work a lot, you know, and they're,
Hmm.
you know, always gone. So what I always told my high school students is to first understand that stress in our stress and anxiety is caused for the things that we feel out of control of, right? And when you can start conceptualizing what first is even priority in your life, and understand what you absolutely have control over and what we absolutely don't have control over. And I love to
Hmm.
tell my teenagers, like, you control the whole household with your tone. Like, you know, my students would, you know, they'd be thinking, you know, they'd sit there like, what you talking about? And I say, hey, listen, you know, mom and dad do not know this, you know, this wonderful world of school that we're in. And that's why I said I'm blessed to have been in it with them.
Hmm.
But I just remind them that their parents are people too, or the people that they're around. There's a world that they there may be a disconnect, but to just hold a space and accept, you know, what they may not understand, and to try to offer them that graciousness first. So I really try to teach young people to, you know, offer up what you would like to see.
Hmm.
And then just know that it is innately there in your family, and people just like they have a lot going on that they take home from school. You know, parents and families bring in things that often don't have a lot to do with them, but you know, it just kind of projects and affects. And I just try to teach them to be in control of what they can. And owning that power right there, it's a domino effect of confidence.
Absolutely. Well, and certainly one thing that you can and have controlled in your past is your work ethic. And you don't become a state champion in high school by slouching off at practices or anything like that. Tell us a little bit about what you did extra so that you could be a state title holder. I mean, that's huge. Everybody dreams of that, but very few people accomplish it. So what was your training like compared to everyone else's training?
That's the yeah. So, well, one of the first things I did, which I have to, you know, be truly honest, I was in ninth grade. I went to a college preparatory school, so my school didn't have sports. We had to do sports at our home school.
Hmm.
So I would be bused at the last period of the day to get to the school on time to do my sports.
Hmm.
And I remember when I was in ninth grade, I actually started running track in seventh grade. I didn't start there early, you know. The one time my dad took me, he was supposed to be taking me to a dance competition, like to a dance practice, and he
Uh-huh.
took me to a track meet, and I like qualified for nationals. It was like the Hershey Nationals, but I was nine,
Wow.
so I wasn't even ready for all that, right? And we came home and told my mom. She was like, "You didn't go to dance." He was like, "Moshe's fast, honey." And so after that, by the time I did start running track, when I was in ninth grade, I remember I was calling myself having a boyfriend, and when track season came, it was a Wednesday. I'll never forget. We were eating like these little fiestadas because he always brings this up, and we're like grown ups. And I told him, I said, "Listen, I said we gotta break up because I just don't date during track season." And he looked at me
Wow.
like I just, you know, I was that focused on, you know, at 7 I saw something that was phenomenal. Like I knew I was fast, and I just saw somebody be fast, and I just knew like I can't do both. I can't. I'm like I'm only 13, 14. I just it's a lot, like, you know. And I'm a nice girl, so I don't want him to feel bad. And I like running track, and I like winning. And like I've been winning before I met you, so for me it was kind of like I just really had a desire to be successful, and I didn't compromise that. And then when I did, you know, because I had peer pressure, but I
Hmm.
was more focused on my goal. You know, my goal and what I wanted, and being in the Olympics and running fast and being successful in the classroom, being a leader. My students, I was a class president for our from sophomore year on to our senior year. I actually asked the vice president and told the class to switch me because I knew that my life was going to take me places 10 years later, and I really would be able to plan a class reunion. And lo and behold, it did. And it worked out just perfectly because I brought my medal back, and it was like in 2009, it was like all of our medal. So it was a really cool
Wow.
experience. You know, I would just tell young people to stay focused and keep that collective group of friends that keeps them accountable,
Hmm.
but cheer them on. You know, there's a real fine line that I think young people have to now be honest with who's in their corner, and that's okay. And I
Right.
think they first need to tell themselves that that is okay, to decide like who's my cheerleader, who's being honest with me, who's holding me accountable. And I think when you have that, well, I know when you have that, it does keep you thriving and keep you pushing through. But you need someone to call to be like, yo, coach was crazy, or man, let me tell you about my mom, or you just have, but you have to have all that. So that's really what I would tell young people.
That's really cool. Now, one of the things that you did, and this happens to all high school kids, it's that time in your life from 15 to 25 where you're making a lot of big time decisions that will affect you for years and years. And one decision that you made was interesting. You decided to go to Texas for college instead of staying home at The Ohio State, which has a great track program. What went into that decision to leave your comforts of home and go to a different place?
There were a couple of things. One, it came down to making a decision between UCLA and Texas. But in terms of leaving, I did not want to be cold. And I remember we ran a track in April, and it started snowing. And it's in April, it was my senior year. Mm-hmm. And it was a 200, it was the last event. And the starter told us we could take one thing off. Like we could either leave on our jogging pants or leave on our top, but we couldn't have on like the full sweatsuit. And I was just like, so of course I left my pants on. I need my legs to be warm. It's snowing outside. And when the snow fell on my arms and we still ran that race, I knew then I probably wasn't going to stay where it was cold, because I saw that they would still run track meets. I was like, okay, I thought that the snow might. So that really kind of pushed me, thinking about honestly being in a warm place, considering it was track and field I was going to be going to school for, not basketball. Mm-hmm. And that mattered like that. And I was glad I had that track meet, because I might not have been as comfortable as I thought I was for a young lady who likes I like being warm. That's why I'm in Florida. I like being hot, actually. I can go inside. Right. But when it came to like the distance at home, I think that, it was really my dad that solidified me, understanding that it's okay for me to be away. Of course your mom wants you to like, that's so far. The schools I was visiting, she really was like, UCLA, LA? Right. You grew up in Ohio. And I'm like, yeah, but it's LA. I need to see something different. My mom was like, oh gosh, no, I don't want to see anything different. But my dad was just like, honey, you go where what makes you happy. And so after taking my visits and, looking at the programs, I really, I was always fond of LA because that's where Jackie Joyner Kersee was training, and FloJo, like that was everything. And my visit was phenomenal to UCLA. It really was. And I remember at the time I was doing an internship for Merrill Lynch, because the school I went to, we had to do an internship every Wednesday, which was really a great opportunity. And it came down to me having my signing day was on that Friday, and I really did not know where I was going to go. It was down in Texas and UCLA. And so one of the brokers called me into his office. His name was Tom Fuleri, and I'll never forget this moment. He's like, do you know where you're going to go, Moushaumi? I was like, no, I have no idea. And I'm almost near tears. I was like, this is so conflicting. Like, this is a major life decision. And so he says, you know what? He said, let's flip a coin. And I'm like, I know we are not going to flip a coin about my life. Like, this is major, guy. And so he says, decide which school is going to be head. Decide which school is going to be tails. And I'm like, okay. He said, don't tell me, just have me in your head. And I'm like, all right. So I decide, and he takes the coin, he flips the coin. And so I'm eager and anxious. And so he catches the coin, and he's like, so where are you going to school? And I'm sitting there like, well, I don't know, turn it over. I'm waiting to see. And he says, no. He says, there's a side that you want this coin to be on more than the other. He said, what's that side? I said, heads. He says, what is heads? I said, Texas. He says, that's where you go. And that was really like the deciding moment. Like, okay, yeah, I get that. For that's all amazing. The reasons, like, right? So yeah, that was really what led me to Texas.
Huh. Well, I'm sure Texas is glad you made that decision. You're one of their most decorated athletes of all time. Tons of accolades while you were in college. Do you have a particular highlight from college that stands out, a favorite moment?
Man, you know what? That was such a journey. There are so many memorable and favorable moments. What I do remember mostly was, during the time, when our coach got into an accident, when the accident happened, I was a senior that year. And to see a group of young ladies come together and, really, all the things that happen on teams personally that athletes bring to a team, to see in like a moment's eye that like a light switch flip off. It just showed me the beauty of humanity in college, in on a team in sports, that you normally
Right.
see when you see something. It was a tragedy that we experienced, right? And we all dealt with it in our own personal way. But when it came to showing up for the Texas women's team and showing up for Bev and showing up for the University of Texas and representing what it meant to be a Lady Longhorn, like it really was like an overnight light switch. After we had the grief, after we went through, all the procedures we needed to, we immediately got back to work and put all our personal things aside. And when we came to work, and even in just in classes and when we had dinners with each other, we held a space for each other differently. And that was, for me, I think for the entire team and young women on the team at the time, that was something that was necessary for all of us to experience in a life like that.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's interesting because we've had several Olympians on the show, and I usually ask, "What's your favorite moment from the Olympics?" But here, it's fun to have that with your collegiate experience, because typically people will say, this time on the podium or finishing this race. But I love that this was about being part of a team and being there for someone who needs you, because in life, those are the moments that matter, right? We like the personal accolades, and those add to who we are, certainly. But it's the relationships and it's the development that matters. So that's such a cool story for that moment. So I appreciate you bringing that out. We'll talk about the Olympics in a minute, but I want to talk now to youth about how they can be their best selves. I mean, this is something that you're definitely an expert on. You've excelled in a lot of things. So if we're talking directly to youth today, what would you say are one or two things that they can be doing right now, even in a crazy world and an uncertain world that we live in, that to make sure that they're moving forward and reaching their potential?
The first thing I would always tell my young people is to always think positive forward, always throw positive thought forward. No matter what a circumstance look like, the beauty of humanity and the reason why we are here as people is to do some amazing things, regardless as to the things that we encounter along the way. Those are really just to refine our character, to make us better people. And the things that they don't understand, because there's so much, to consume, we all have this innate little person talking to us, right? Go with that guy, talk to that girl, own our emotions, and allow. I think that I would tell young people, do not judge your emotions. Have that moment, acknowledge your emotions about whatever you're feeling, allow it, accept it, hold a space for yourself and others in that time, and move forward in the most positive fashion. And know when you just have to stand still and be in a positive space, standing still, because things are what they are. Trust their instincts, that little voice. And when I say trust it, I think when you think of the idea of faith, or what makes someone move forward, or go when they don't know what's on the other end, that's trusting your own instinctive self, that what innately is great is so, and you can create it by the way you think, by the way you move, by the way you treat others. And what we put out in the world, we get back. So if you think positively, no matter what it looks like, energy is neither lost nor destroyed, it's just transferred.
Mm-hmm.
Find that gracious space, offer that, and everything they put out, they'll get back. And, to just trust that, and know that dreams do come true.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I know that you certainly practice what you preach when it comes to, moving forward and having that positive mindset, because that is what has propelled you forward in your career. Your professional track career aside, we have to talk about the Olympics, because that's just such an important moment for so many people. I mean, it's an important moment for me as an American, just watching it on TV. It's an important part of who I am, and there's so much pride in going and representing your country. So as you went to Athens back in 2004, I don't want to ask what your favorite moment was. What I want to ask is, what is something that you didn't anticipate about going to the Olympics, about traveling internationally and having that experience that maybe now you really value, but at the time it was just something that you weren't expecting or were struggling with, or anything like that?
Man, that's a great question. One thing I didn't expect is, being in Athens during that time, definitely did not see any part of Athens in terms of
Right.
sightseeing. During the time that we trained on the island of Crete, I had a great opportunity to, train, relax, and see all the wonderful parts of the world in that space. But once we got to Athens, we were really inside the village, and that was amazing. I think what I wasn't expecting when I actually ran, I didn't know what to expect, but it was beyond different than what I had ever seen. When I tell people about the moment, I remember seeing a young woman bring it to me, and as I'm holding waiting on her, I'm watching other people get ready to pass their batons off. And when I take the baton and I start running, the only thing I see is a white oval, because so many people were flashing the camera. But when I was standing out there, I could see images. But once I started running, it was just this white light all the way around. And then it was so loud that the only thing I heard was my breath. I didn't see any more images, and all I heard was my breath. And I just remember, like, wow, I really only saw a white blur. Like, I saw no more people once I got the baton. And so that's like, I tell people that because that's just really it was an unexpected phenomenon in a race. And so when I look back on that, that's what I can tell people about the Olympics. Like, that's when people talk about what it's like competing on the biggest stage, that is the most visual, practical thing I can say about what it was running the 400, because no race I ever ran did I not see the people around me. I just saw a white blur and only heard my breath. And I just thought that was so phenomenal because what they were screaming were USA. And so when we talk about that patriotism and what our country means and what this flag means to me and what it means to represent, the United States of America on a stage, to know that everyone was cheering and shouting USA, and that's what was keeping my inner breath that's tears. That's beautiful. I think when you see afterward, because a lot of people are like, why weren't you smiling? I was like, I think I was overwhelmed because once I stopped, it was like back again. It was like, what was that? I could have winded. The moment had happened. I'm like, and that is an Olympic moment. So I was like, that just even when I share it, it's kind of like, that was really real. And that was really what I lived. And that would be an Olympic moment because you don't see that either.
Now, which leg of the relay were you?
I was the second leg. So I had to run the first full turn and then cut in.
So what I'm really curious about is, what was it like waiting for those last two legs to see your teammates finishing out the race? What was that experience like?
That anxiety, well, one, the whole goal is to bring the baton in the lead on, it's particularly in the 4x4. But that anxiety, you hope you've done your part, and then it's like you're tired, but you want to be their legs at the same time, right? Like, when they're about to be tired, and like you want to be wings to go carry them, but you got to just cheer them on in, and then the fourth person gets it. But being that we are the United States of America, and I tell you, I love to win. We were going to win. And I ran accordingly. I didn't like where I got the baton, so I ran my heart out. My legs almost fell underneath me because we are the best. And I was committed to making sure that we did what we were supposed to do to ensure that the girls can do what they were supposed to do in the finals. And, to come right out of college, be uncompromising in my training. And, the one thing I can say that really helped, my parents sacrificed and paid my rent when I graduated all the way through me going to the games and winning that gold medal because they believed in what I was doing, and I wasn't sponsored at the time. And I was determined, in moving straight from Texas to North Carolina with a different coach, making that commitment. I tell young people, people may question their dreams, right? People may question their path, but you got to go with what you know, and whatever bumps come along the way, those are the lessons to make our character sharper, make us wiser. Our experiences make us wiser. You take all this knowledge that you're learning in the books to get the basics, but you use those experiences to really hone in on, the direction you should take. But don't beat yourself up if it's like, oh, I went the wrong way. No, you went the way that your journey went. And what you're supposed to do is sit back, learn from it, and make choices according to the wisdom that you gain from those experiences. Be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic message. And I think we'll end with that because I really like that idea that, you need to trust yourself and life isn't going to go the way we expect, but you roll with it, right?
Roll with it. No.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us today and sharing this message with us. Just really appreciate it and all the value you've given these kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Blessings.